Thanks, Helen. I hope everyone can hear me and see that okay. So thank you all very much for coming today to listen to Ben and I. My name's Jess. I'm the Health Services Manager at Crohn's and Colitis UK, and Ben is one of our local network volunteers and also a patient. I'm going to talk you through some information about Crohn's and colitis and about the support services that the charity offers, and then hand over to Ben to hear his perspective as a patient and volunteer. So to start off with, I'm just going to play a couple of short videos that give quite a good amount of detail about what Crohn's and colitis actually are.
How are you doing today? Yeah, fine.
I'm fine.
Fine, thanks.
When you have Crohn's or colitis, a lot of the time you look fine, but your body is attacking itself. It's like having a wound on the inside. No one can see it or what it's doing to you. So no one understands how hard it is for me to even get to work every morning.
Oh, I feel like a bad mum. Because I'm too exhausted to do all the things that everyone else does.
Or why I'm afraid to do all the stuff my mates take for granted.
No one sees my pain.
My exhaustion.
My embarrassment. A lot of the time, it's just easier to say,
I'm fine.
Fine, thank you.
fine,
I'm fine.
Fine.
fine,
Fine.
Fine.
yeah, fine. Actually, I'm really struggling today.
The first time I talked about my condition, I just didn't know how they'd react.
I was just sick, putting on a front.
But from that moment, I knew I wasn't alone.
Just talking about what I'm going through has helped so much. Now people understand when I could use some support.
Or when I might need a bit of reassurance.
Or when I just need someone to meet me halfway.
Being open about your condition isn't always easy and it isn't always fun.
It can be hard to find the right time or the right words.
It takes guts to talk about Crohn's and colitis, but we can't go on suffering in silence.
Because no one can see it until we say it.
Until we see it.
Until we say it.
And now I've got another video. This one highlights the symptoms that people experience.
Live with either Crohn's or colitis.
It was really a whole host of symptoms, from bloatedness to diarrhea, constipation, water, blood in the stool, and just general tiredness, and of course the anxiety that comes along with it.
But then I started to become really ill, and that was difficult because although I wanted to carry on with my PhD, I'll be honest, there were times when I would be sat doing my research and I would feel so ill and so tired that I did wonder at times if I could carry on with this. I was determined that I wasn't going to give in. So yeah, I got my PhD and I was really proud of myself.
I had difficulty a few years ago with strictures in my small bowel that caused quite significant vomiting and difficulty keeping solid foods down, and also the joint pain. It's, even in the early days, I wasn't aware that a bowel condition could cause problems with your knees, your elbows, anything that bends. When I'm in a flare, I often go to the toilet around 20 times a day. All loose stool, with blood loss, abdominal pain, quite significant urgency. I don't always make it to the toilet in time, which causes quite a significant impact on my confidence.
Things that would affect my stomach the most was probably the diarrhea, because it was unpredictable, it was sometimes very ferocious, and created a lot of anxiety and a lot of pain.
I developed fistulas, and fistulas are an abnormal connection between the bowel and another area of the body, and that was causing me immense pain and an awful lot of infections and bleeding and urgency, needing to get to the toilet quickly.
So I also have oral Crohn's, which causes swelling in the gums, ulcers, external sores, swelling of the lips. That causes quite an impact for eating and drinking and staying hydrated.
One of the other symptoms that affected me was the fatigue, you know, the tiredness, and it was not a case of being out of breath. It was just a general fatigue.
The main symptoms that I tend to get is chronic fatigue, feeling very, very tired, brain fog, difficulty with concentration. But I also get skin problems as well. So last year I had psoriasis on my scalp, I lost a lot of my hair, and that was a difficult time. That was something that was hard to deal with.
I do get flare-ups from time to time. Sometimes it'll be once a year for a week. Sometimes it might be 4 or 5 weeks.
I still get flares occasionally, abdominal flares with pain and diarrhea, which can be quite debilitating and can mean that you don't really want to leave your home for a few days.
The way Crohn's affects me fluctuates on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, depending how things are. To look after myself, I make myself as comfortable as possible. I rest, hide under a blanket, have snacks that I know won't cause a significant amount of pain, and I try to be kind to myself.
My other support system is my friends. I've surrounded myself by some really good friends that understand me and understand what's happening, and they are very, very supportive.
It's a chronic illness and it's a journey. You have to accept that part of it, and you must concentrate on your mental health overall, because that's the one thing that will help you get through the tough times.
Living with the symptoms of IBD can be very overwhelming and consuming, and it's very easy to lose sight of who you are in it all. When I'm feeling this way, I try to remind myself that I am Sophie, and I have Crohn's. It doesn't have me. My advice to other people is to remind yourself of who you are, and although IBD is a huge part of your life and will always be a huge part of your life, it doesn't own you and it doesn't define you.
Live with either.
Apologies. So I'm just going to carry on talking about Crohn's and colitis and the symptoms and side effects. So when your gut doesn't work, the consequences can be devastating. I'll say more about symptoms on the next slide, but it's very important to remember that people can be affected much wider than their gut inflammation, which we'll talk about more. Many people are diagnosed before the age of 30, and this can be particularly devastating as it can impact things like work and relationships. Research is constantly developing and revealing new information. However, there's currently no known cure. So Crohn's and colitis are two forms of inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD. These are lifelong diseases of the gut. They are painful, debilitating, and widely misunderstood. And as I just mentioned, there's currently no known cure. If you have Crohn's or colitis, your immune system doesn't work properly. Your body starts attacking itself, causing ulcers and inflammation in the gut. Imagine having a wound that never heals, only it's on the inside. So looking at symptoms specifically, not everyone experiences the same symptoms, but common symptoms include ulcers, urgent diarrhea, blood and mucus in stools, pain, extreme fatigue, vomiting, strictures, which is the bowel narrowing, which one of the people in the video we just watched mentioned. So that's what strictures are, and fistulas. And as I said, Crohn's and colitis doesn't just affect your gut, it can affect almost every other area of your body too. And that may mean that people experience anemia, malnutrition, weight loss or weight gain, joint, skin, and liver problems, poor mental health, and surgery to remove all of the affected sections of the digestive tract. So now we're going to look at the work of Crohn's and Colitis UK to improve diagnosis and treatment and to fund research into a cure, to raise awareness and to give people hope, comfort and confidence to lead fuller, freer lives. We work on various different areas. So we work on research, information and support, campaigns, health services, evidence and insight, membership, volunteering and local networks, fundraising, and policy influencing. Crohn's and Colitis UK is the UK's leading charity for everyone affected by Crohn's or colitis. As the video said, over 500,000 people in the UK live with these lifelong conditions, but they're not alone. We're changing things in 5 key areas. Number 1, we're helping everyone understand what Crohn's and colitis is. 2, we're driving world-class research into the conditions. 3, we're supporting and empowering people. 4, we're working towards high quality, sustainable care across the UK. And 5, we're working towards early and accurate diagnosis for all. Now I'm going to talk specifically about our support services that are available for people living with inflammatory bowel disease. We have a helpline that's available for those needing information and support. Last year, we responded to over 9,000 queries via the phone, email, and live chat on our website. Of those who gave feedback, 98% agreed or strongly agreed that they would recommend the helpline to others affected by Crohn's or colitis. After this presentation, you'll be sent some information about Crohn's and Colitis UK, and that will include all the details of how to access all these support services. We also bring people together through our virtual social events, where people can have a chance to chat, share experiences, and potentially learn from others. By January of this year, we've delivered 208 events with over 2,000 people attending. We also have 47 local networks of volunteers across the nation who arrange educational meetings, social events, generate awareness and fundraise. Last year, around 180 events were hosted. Ben's going to talk later about his experience as a local network volunteer and talk about virtual social events some more. But I can share that the nearest local networks to Northumberland, we have one called Hadrian, and then there's the Durham and Wearside local network as well. We've recently been awarded the PIF tick. The PIF tick, for those of you who don't know, is the UK-wide quality mark for health information. It is a sign of health information you can trust. And in 2023, we had over 2.4 million total views of all the information pages that are available for free on our website. Now looking at our policy and health services work. So our policy and campaigns team advocate to the UK government and devolved nations through submissions, manifestos and letters to ensure our community's needs are met by the NHS and local services. In the past, we've held parliamentary events in Westminster, Wales and Scotland, where politicians and healthcare professionals heard directly from people living with Crohn's and colitis. As a health services manager, I work on our health services programmes, which includes the next 2 points. So I can talk a bit more about those in detail. So we have an IBD nurse specialist programme where we fund education and development of 34 nurse specialists around the UK. We pay for nurses to complete their masters part-time over 3 years, or for nurses to credential with the Royal College of Nursing. This supports our beliefs that everyone living with Crohn's and colitis should have access to a suitably qualified IBD nurse specialist. As part of our work with IBD UK, we've created reports based on benchmarking that's done through surveys to IBD services and to patients across the UK. So in 2021, we published the report, Crohn's and Colitis Care in the UK, the Hidden Cost and a Vision for Change. Over 10,000 people with Crohn's and colitis and 72% of IBD services across the UK took part. We repeated that process last year, And the new national report is due later this summer. But the reports on individual IBD services are now available on the website. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look in more detail at the nearest hospital that completed the local service survey. So this link will be shared with you. We have a map of local services, and the nearest hospitals that completed the local service survey were Wandsbek General and the Great North Children's Hospital. So what I've done is I've decided to look at Wandsbek General. So the next few slides, these are screenshots from the PDF that you can download for any hospital, for any service that's completed the survey. So I'm just going to walk you through these figures now. And I'm very happy, Ben and I are happy to take any questions at the end, but if anyone has questions in particular about the IBD UK local reports, as that's what I work on, I can particularly help you with those. So Wandsbek General covers a population of 500,000 and it supports 2,500 adult IBD patients, of which 112 were diagnosed in the past 12 months. This PDF combines the service survey and the patient survey, so we're able to see data from patients as well as from the clinicians. So in the last 12 months, 55% of patients rated their quality of care as excellent or very good, 23% rated as fair, and 23% also rated as poor. So there we go. Okay, this one, apologies if it's not too clear, but the slides will be sent out, so I know it's quite small. This one is looking at the inflammatory bowel disease team. So when we do this benchmarking, it's based on something called the IBD standards, and these are aspirational standards that we hope all services work towards. What this slide in particular shows is how many, for example, how many nurse specialists we think the service should have and how many they actually have. So I'm just going to pick out a few. I won't look at them all. But for example, the standards say that there should be 5 IBD nurse specialists, but there's actually 4 in the service. But then the IBD standards said there should be 4 consultant gastroenterologists, but there's actually 13. So in some areas, Wandsbek General is higher and some is lower. And that's, you know, I'd say that's usual across the country. So those will be shared later if anyone wants to look at those in particular, but it talks about all the different members of the MDT. So now what I'm going to do on the next few slides is walk you through the patient journey and how we benchmark through there. So the first one, all patients with IBD are seen within 4 weeks of their first referral. This hasn't been achieved by Wandsbek General. It has only been achieved by 48% of services in the UK. However, Wandsbek General have achieved that all newly diagnosed patients are offered written information on their condition, which we can see 91% of services in the UK have also done. 34% of patients have attended A&E before their diagnosis, which is very close to the UK survey response of 35%. And Wandsbek General have also achieved that new diagnoses and the care plan are communicated to the GPs within 1 week for each patient, and that's achieved by 70% of services in the UK. Now I'm going to look at flare management and surgery and inpatient care. So in those videos we watched earlier, some of the patients talked about having a flare and about how their symptoms changed during that time. So that's what we're looking at. So 71% of patients at Wandsbek General were able to contact the IBD advice line and get a response within 2 working days, which again is quite similar to the UK response of 77%. A process exists for communication of a management plan for optimising care within 5 working days of a flare, and that's achieved by 85% across the UK. You'll see the next question, there's no response because we didn't receive enough patient answers. So as part of the benchmarking, if we receive less than 5 patient responses, then we don't offer that as an answer. So we don't have information about patients being given clear information for their operations. The hospital also achieved that surgical outcomes are regularly audited for elective IBD surgery, and that's only achieved by 50% of services in the UK. And all inpatients with IBD are seen by a gastroenterologist within 24 hours of emergency admission, which is only achieved by 60% of services in the UK, so that's great to see. However, elective IBD surgery is not all taking place within 18 weeks, and that is something that's achieved by 70% of services in the UK. Just got a couple more slides on this before we go back to more general Crohn's and colitis UK information. So this slide is all about personalised care. So we can see that 94% of patients at the hospital have contacted an IBD nurse specialist, which is great to see, and that's higher than the UK survey response of 88%. 57% of patients have regular reviews, even when their condition is stable, which, although it might sound a bit low, the UK response is 44, so still higher than the UK number. IBD patients are all offered a written personalised care plan, which is wonderful to see because that's only achieved by 26% of services in the UK. And then 59% of patients believe their care is well coordinated between their GP and gastroenterologist, which is great, again, because it's higher than the UK response of 43%. And I'm sure many of you would agree that well-coordinated care between primary and secondary care is a really essential part of good care for patients. And then lastly, 44% of patients discuss wider life and priorities as part of planning their care, which again is wonderful to see that holistic process. And that is higher than the UK survey response of 25%. So although, again, it might seem quite low, it's higher than the average. I think this is my final slide on this hospital. So this is looking at the IBD service itself. So all patients have access to outpatient colonoscopy or flexible sigmoidoscopy within 4 weeks. That's not actually been achieved yet, but it's only been achieved by 31% of services in the UK. IBD patients are also not directly involved in service development, but again, that's only been achieved by 24% of services in the UK. So it's really important to look at that number as well each time. They have achieved that there's a senior leadership team in place in the IBD service, which is great. And the IBD patients receive copies of clinic letters routinely, which, as you can see, is the UK is quite low, only 24%. And finally, only 15% of patients have been given the opportunity to feedback on their care in the past 12 months, which likewise is similar to the UK response of 18%. So I hope that was helpful for everyone. Very happy to answer questions on that. And like I say, if you go online on the link that Tim will email out, you can look at other hospitals in the area, depending on whether they've completed their service survey. Unfortunately, not every team has had the capacity to do so. But if they have and patients have responded, that information is there for you to take a look at. So going back to Crohn's and colitis, our research colleagues, since 1979, they've been driving world-class research, and we've given over 12.6 million to date. This is increasing knowledge of the causes and best treatment of Crohn's and colitis. And hopefully some of you have seen, there's been some recent research developments in the news about DNA. Each autumn, we run a virtual patient involvement and research day where researchers present their current or future studies, giving people the opportunity to ask burning questions and shape research for the better. The most recent one of these took place in November last year. And we awarded funding to 5 new research projects at the end of last year, totaling almost £500,000. That grant call in particular asked for proposals which targeted an area of unmet need in inflammatory bowel disease. And we focused on priorities that were identified from feedback from our community in particular and from a partnership. I'm now just going to look at a few campaigns. So firstly, we had an earlier diagnosis campaign that was launched in November 22 called Cut the Crap. This campaign was designed specifically to encourage young people, because young people are most likely to make excuses for the key symptoms of Crohn's and colitis and delay contacting their GP. Every year, 25,000 people get diagnosed with Crohn's or colitis, but we know that 1 in 4 of those have been waiting for a diagnosis for over a year, and nearly half of those end up in A&E while waiting for a diagnosis. We created an online symptom checker, and like it says, and I can agree with this because I've done it myself, in just 30 seconds, you'll know what to do, including whether you should contact your GP, what symptoms you should talk to your GP about, and what you can expect from your appointment. Anybody who's concerned, I would really advise you to look at this online because it's so quick to do. And if you put your email in, you can have advice emailed directly to you that you can then take to your GP appointment. So if you're feeling uncomfortable about talking about certain symptoms, you can actually take that with you, and it gives you the language. And you know, it's brilliant. I can't recommend it enough. Delays to diagnosis can affect people's ability to continue educational work. It can limit their treatment options and increases the risk of being hospitalised or needing emergency surgery. So whether you live with Crohn's or colitis or know someone affected by the conditions, we need your help, and we ask people to back our call for early diagnosis today. So far, over 200,000 people have completed the symptom checker, and over 4,000 people have contacted their MP demanding an improved diagnostic pathway. So for more information, if you go to our website /cut the crap, you can see more information there and use the online symptom checker. Another campaign was called Are You In? And this was about making work better for people with invisible disabilities. The campaign was designed to help employers better support people living with invisible conditions and disabilities like Crohn's and colitis at work. By being in, employers can make a life-changing difference to members of staff and team. So looking after employees' well-being can benefit employees, their company, and the wider society. Companies that recognise the needs of people with invisible conditions can improve the productivity of the workforce, lower staff turnover, drive better employee well-being and satisfaction. And this is where we can help employers develop better approaches to managing long-term conditions in the workplace. And then I think this is the final one. Little things can mean a lot. So this is a wonderful campaign. If someone you know that has Crohn's or colitis, the little things you do can make a big difference to them. It can be really hard to know how best to help someone who's living with Crohn's or colitis or any other invisible chronic condition. You might feel anxious or powerless because you can't take their condition away. Our Little Things Can Mean a Lot campaign helps you find small ways to help someone living with Crohn's or colitis, whether it's helping with everyday fatigue or following surgery. So again, if you go to our website /little things, there's more information there. This slide is all about the different ways that we can help support people living with inflammatory bowel disease and also friends and family. So as I said, all this information will be sent out, but I'll just run through it quickly. So our helpline provides up-to-date evidence-based information and can support you to live well with Crohn's or colitis. You can contact us by phone, email, or live chat through our website, and that's Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, except English bank holidays. All our written information is available online for free at our website /information. We also have some membership options, and that includes being given the Can't Wait card, the Radar key, and the Connect magazine, which is digital and print. Next, we've got the local networks, which Ben will talk more about, but you can find more details about the Hadrian and the Durham and Wearside local networks on our website, and the virtual social events that, again, Ben is going to talk more about, but you can look on the website for more details. And then, of course, we have various online communities. We have a moderated Facebook group. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then lastly, before I hand over to Ben, different ways to get involved. So you can play your part in helping us all towards improving lives today and a world free from Crohn's and colitis tomorrow. So if you check out our website /get involved, you can find out ways that you can donate, fundraise, volunteer, campaign, become a member, or support research. So thank you all very much. I'd be happy to take questions after Ben's spoken, but I'll hand over to him now.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. Yeah, so that was quite a lot of information. So I'm going to be here to sort of give a bit of a patient's perspective as well as a local volunteer, local network volunteer perspective. The first thing I really want to say, I've just written it down while we were watching that presentation, is that first video, I'm fine. And it made me a little bit emotional watching that, because the amount of times that you just say to people, yeah, I'm fine, because it's so much easier. The amount of times you don't look sick is quite a popular thing you hear. Everything is on the inside generally, unless you're lying in a heap, which occasionally happens. People just assume that you're okay because you're so used to saying I'm fine. So yeah, that was really hard to watch. And also nobody really wants to talk about poo. So I'm here with my friends, colleagues, family, and everyone around me. I am the man to come to about poo and bowel habits, and I try and make sure that everyone I talk to is happy to talk about that, because it's a taboo subject. It always has been, and people hopefully are becoming a bit more aware of it and being a bit more open to talking about it. Because going back to when, well, before my diagnosis, I just assumed I was normal. I would be going to the toilet. I was 15, going to the toilet 15, 20 times a day, Nobody told me that wasn't normal. That was normal for me, and it was normal for years after that. It was only when things got really bad, and I had very bad abdominal cramps. I hadn't been to the toilet for a while, and for me, somebody who goes to the toilet 15 times a day, that was a little bit concerning. So that built up and built up. I even went to work that day, and I was very lucky that somebody I worked with had some bowel issues and said, I think you probably should go to the hospital. You don't seem very well. And I was, oh, it'll be fine. I've had these before. It got worse and worse and worse until eventually I managed to get my dad to come and get me, and he took me to the hospital. Unfortunately for my dad, we were in a new car to him, which had beige interior. And I just managed to get to the hospital before I fecal vomited, which is also something people don't want to hear about or talk about, which is instead of going one way, it comes out the other. But that, as a tip, gets you through A&E quite quickly. They can be very concerned, and they don't want you doing that in the waiting room. So that was kind of how I found my diagnosis. I went to the hospital, they checked me out, and it turns out that on a previous appointment I'd had a few months prior to this event, they had diagnosed me with something called Crohn's disease, but they hadn't told me. My appointment had been cancelled where they were going to tell me. And unfortunately, they came to my bed and were like, oh, so you've got Crohn's disease, what medication are you on? And I've never heard of this. What are you on about? I'd never heard of the disease. No one had ever mentioned this. No one in my family had had this issue. So you go home. I had no information at this point. I didn't know what to do. I carried on with life. I thought, okay, I've been given some medication. I will now be better. Of course, you've been given medication by the doctors. You will now be good. But little did I know, a few months later, another blockage ended up in Leicester Hospital, which is where I now live. Not Leicester Hospital, in Leicester. And they have been fantastic. So in there, I met a lady called Lynn, who was the lead volunteer at the time of a little charity called Crohn's and Colitis UK. And she heard me talking to somebody and was like, oh, hi, I've got Crohn's as well. You should come and talk to us. And I was like, what, there are other people? I'd never spoken to anybody about this. And this is now how I've become part of Crohn's and Colitis UK as a volunteer. She invited me along to, at the time, there were educational meetings, which we still do, and she invited me along. I got to sit with 30 or 40 other people from my local area and listen to a talk by some of our gastro experts from Leicester hospitals. And then we had a cup of tea, and the first person I sat next to there was a lovely lady well into her 70s. She'd had a bit of a rough time. She sat down and she said, oh, I've just had diarrhea with loads of poo in it. Oh, it's terrible. Anyway, my name's Helen. What's your name? Like, hang on, you're starting with this. And that's when you sort of breathe out. You go, oh, I've met my people. I've met people I can sit and talk to openly. You know, friends and family, they hear certain things, but as soon as you're out of sight, it goes out of mind. The same as you would be with, you know, anyone that you know. So having somebody who sits and listens, and they understand that your symptoms may be hidden, you may be fatigued, you may be sore wrists, you might have sore elbows, your eyes might be swollen up, you might have ulcers in your mouth, never mind everything else going on inside. So having somebody who understands is an incredible resource. So now, as the lead volunteer for my local network, I go and hopefully spread the same kind of things that Lynn passed on to me right back at the beginning. And doing that, we do many things locally. We fundraise, we spread awareness, we do social events, we do educational events, and all of those are just personally to meet people who feel lonely, want to talk about these things, just need to offload, or have maybe never spoken to anybody about it, and we can pass on hints and tips from each other, which is a fantastic resource. And one of those things, as mentioned by Jess earlier, is a virtual social. So if you do not have a local network near you, or maybe you're busy, you've got a family to look after, you've got a busy job, you've got a busy life, you can't get across to the social events or the educational meetings that we put on as a local network, join one of the virtual socials. They're generally branded up as Southwest, Devon, Ireland, Liverpool, but you're welcome to come to any of them. I mean, if you go along, they are free, they are friendly, and it's similar to this. You can see each other's faces, but we also allow people to have the video off. If you're a bit shy, maybe this is your first time, you don't even have to talk, you can just sit and listen, which we find is so reassuring to some people. So very much recommend a virtual social event. Like I said, they are free. We have targeted ones for parents and carers. So if you're a friend or family member, you can come along to that. We get brothers, sisters, mums, dads, grands, aunts. We get people that look after children from 1 up to 40. And they all get in the mix and have a great chat. So very much recommend that. And some of the things that have been mentioned through this slide, I've written some notes, and one of them was Dr. Google, because Crohn's and Colitis UK, our publications are fact-checked, verified, and it's not superfluous, it's all checked. Whereas you go on Dr. Google and it's like looking at your local mechanic. Only the bad reviews have been put on there, and it's the same with IBD. We get Crohn's or colitis. The only people on the internet that are talking about it generally will be bad things. Oh, this terrible thing happened to me. And if you're looking for support, that is not what you want to see. It's very rare you get the one person that says, oh, my local mechanic did a great job fixing this and it was a great price. You don't get that. So Dr. Google, we try and encourage to avoid that and head over to Crohn's or colitis website to find your publications. The can't wait card and the radar key were briefly mentioned there for the membership. They are fantastic. The can't wait card is like a debit card side card. You stick it in your wallet, and all it does on there is explain that you are somebody who has urgency to the toilet, and it explains a little bit about your disease, and it's a nice way of just putting on a counter in a shop. They don't have to take note of it, but they generally can be quite nice and allowed to use toilets that maybe aren't open to the public because they understand you have an illness, and it is great. The same with the radar key. If you've never seen them, it's a massive key, but it gets you into the accessible toilets, which is another campaign we did a few years ago, where accessible toilets generally are known as disabled toilets, but we try to show that not all illnesses are visible and we have many different needs. So it was quite often somebody like myself. I generally think I'm quite a fit guy. I run, I work, I don't look sick, as I said earlier. So not having shame when I need to go to the toilet is fantastic. And the radar key and the accessible branding of toilets, I think, has helped solve some of those problems. There's still a little bit of stigma there, but if you come out of a toilet, you can say this is an accessible toilet. Not everybody who's disabled is in a wheelchair. They may be in there for many different reasons. So I'm a big advocate for that. So I've rambled on there for quite a few minutes. I'm not sure I can really add more to that, but I am happy to talk about many different things. Obviously, Jess is here to talk about the Crohn's and Colitis UK aspect. I'm here as a patient and a volunteer, so I have my own opinions and my own views on many different things, treatments, surgery and things like that, and I'd be happy to answer questions in more depth if needed. But for me, I guess that's probably about it. So thank you very much, and hand you back.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Ben. We'll just do our little final thank you slide, and I'll stop sharing if that's okay, and then come back to Helen.
That's great. Thank you so much for that, Jess and Ben. That was really, sort of good. I learned a lot actually that I wasn't already aware of, so that's fantastic. I don't know if anyone's got any questions. Please do, sort of put them in the chat. I guess, sort of comment, I guess, from me is that, sort of I love the title of your campaigns and things. I think it's absolutely, amazing. And I have celiac disease actually, so very used to talking about things. So yes, I'm with you on that one. You mentioned a little bit about this research, this new research. I know it's kind of very, very new and you might not have that much information about it, but is there anything that you can tell us about that? Because it's something to do with them looking at the DNA, isn't it, for kind of the immune system or something?
Yeah. So the gist is that a team working at Imperial and UCL have found what we could describe as a weak spot in DNA that's present in 95% of people with inflammatory bowel disease. And what that weak spot does, it makes it easier for some immune cells to kind of go a bit haywire and drive excessive inflammation in the bowel. So we don't know quite, I don't know quite where it's going to go next, in all honesty, but it's just, it's hugely interesting and extremely important to know that there might be this, reason as to why 95% of people have, with inflammatory bowel disease, have this in common. So that's really interesting. There's lots of stuff in the news about it, as I'm sure you've seen. It was actually, the research was part funded by Crohn's and Colitis UK. So yeah, we're just really happy to see this research being done, and just hopefully it gets us closer to knowing the definitive cause of inflammatory bowel disease, and hopefully that can get us closer to a cure.
Fabulous. There's a question coming into the chat now. Please do post them. If people would prefer, they could raise a hand as well, and I can take them off mute if they prefer to ask. You won't be identified during any questions. So the question here is just about any thoughts on the risks of medication, so immune suppressing or biologic versus risk of not taking it. And this person was diagnosed a year ago with indeterminate Crohn's colitis, and that's the next step after several long flare-ups. I don't know if you're able to comment on that at all, or is this information on your website that's available?
We have a lot of information on the website about medications and its facts, but from a personal point of view, this is not Crohn's or Colitis UK, this is personal. I'm on a medication called mercaptopurine and a biologic called infliximab, and both of them have side effects. So there are simple things we can do. So mercaptopurine and azathioprine are very similar drugs. Factor 50 sun cream, because you can be a bit more susceptible to the sun, so you can get sun cancer, skin cancer from burns a little bit easier. But these are very scary. Like I said about Dr. Google, you read them and it does sound terrifying, but your risk is only slightly raised compared to a normal person, and you have to balance that with what the medications do. And if they give you your life back and you're not restricted to going to the toilet, or you're not in hospital all the time, there are so many benefits to that. When I started taking biologics, it did thin my hair out. That it seems to have gone so far. I don't think it's coming back anymore. But I would say it's definitely worthwhile. But it's one of those things where you work with your IBD team, so the gastro team all want to get you on the straight and narrow to remission, and there's lifestyle, there's diet, and there's medication, and there's also surgery, and you have to work together, and it can take a little while to get to that point. Some of the medications may take 6 weeks to 6 months to really start seeing an improvement from them, so it's sticking with them and understanding how you feel from them. And if you start to see side effects, write them down, talk to your team. Azathioprine made me very nauseous daily. So I spoke to my team, they swapped me to a sister drug, which had less nausea for me. So if you find that as a side effect that's really affecting you, talk to your team and they should be able to help you out in some way with maybe a different medication.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess the message there is, sort of, it's all very individual, isn't it? And, sort of try and, sort of what works. And some of these things may well be, sort of very trial and error, unfortunately. So another question here is someone who has Crohn's disease, currently in remission and on infliximab infusions. My life was changed for the better after starting treatment. Still have extreme fatigue, but so far so good with this treatment, and been on it for about 5 years now. So that sounds like a success story.
Yeah, the fatigue, if anybody finds a cure for the fatigue, I'd very much be interested in that.
Yeah, and I know Ben's doing an excellent job of talking people through this, but as Ben said, look on our website for the information, but also you can call our helpline and they can direct you to where that information is. They can talk you through it. Oh, hang on, I've gone purple. This happens sometimes. I just have to turn my video on and off and then I come back. But yeah, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, on live chat or like the email or helpline, and they can direct you to the right information as well. So yeah, it's really great to have Ben here talking about the patient perspective and to hear other people have found our information useful and found their treatments successful.
Yeah, there are a lot of publications, and most of the main medications are, there's a publication on the website about them, and they're really, really useful. Some tips and tricks. And I'd also say, like I said about the virtual socials or in-person social events, go along and talk to other people, because there's a lot of, oh, this worked for me, and oh, I tried this and this really helped. And there's a lot of things that people find as they go through their journey that help them, might help you in some way. They might not, but it's really good to talk.
That's great. There's a couple of comments as well, just saying, praising your website, excellent information about the drugs on the Crohn's and colitis website. And basically, someone just saying thank you, and the consultant scared the life out of them when discussing, the risks of treatment. So it's just shows how important it is, I think, to get that, sort of peer support, but also, the information that's available on your website. So I guess the question I would have is around because I know the Hadrian and the Tees Valley said that were closest to Northumberland. From looking at it, is the Hadrian one, is that a Newcastle-based one, I think, from...
I think so. I think it might extend a bit into Northumberland, but
right. But people in Northumberland can obviously travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Please, please do feel to travel to your nearest local one. Yeah, I think I spoke to my colleague who's in charge of local networks yesterday, and he mentioned those two. He said there's more likely to be going on at the Durham and Wearside ones, just because, based in the city, there's more people involved. But please do look at both. I think there should be links to Facebook groups on the individual web pages for each local network. But yeah, please feel free to attend. And like Ben said, please feel free to attend the virtual social ones as well, even if there's not one for your area. But yeah.
And I guess if volunteer, sort of networks, if they kind of got extended, then at some point, there might be one, sort of in Northumberland. But I guess it's about availability, isn't it, of volunteers to run groups.
Yeah, I'd just like to say about, if there isn't a network in your area currently active, and you want to set one up, then get in touch, because we're always looking for volunteers. And personally in Leicester, I've got 4 volunteers, which includes me, and we cover a huge area. So the more help we get, the better, because we just reach more people. There's training to sort of how to talk to people, and how to deal with the websites and Facebook and things like that. But it is really helpful. So if you think there's maybe lacking in your area, join and help us out, because that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. We rely on volunteers for these networks. So if there's not one in your area, like Ben says, it's because we need someone. So yeah, if anyone's interested, please get in touch.
Fabulous. I'm sure there's a need for it, as you say, if there's so many people sort of out there. Is it, I presume, also, is it for people who may have not necessarily been formally diagnosed yet, but there's sort of how does that work in terms of becoming going to the groups? Do they have to be formally diagnosed, or could it be just people who are experiencing symptoms? And
I think as long as you're interested and want to listen to other people and chat, everybody's welcome, because there's a lot of similar illnesses as well. So before you're diagnosed, I've also got an IBS, so that also gets mixed in. Like you say, there's celiac quite a lot. There's a lot of people with intolerances to certain things that aren't quite sure what's going on. So coming along and talking to others, and you go, oh yeah, that sounds familiar. Oh, that sounds familiar. Oh, I haven't heard of that test before. Maybe I'll have a chat to my GP about this. And it just opens that conversation, cut the crap, let's talk about it. So come along, no matter what your reasoning, if you're coming along, you're there for a good reason.
No, that sounds fantastic. And, as you say, very sensible, because there's a lot of crossovers, isn't there, with different, sort of gut diseases. And the virtual socials, you'll be sending out information about that. And as Ben says, you can just kind of come along to those. You don't necessarily have to have a camera on if you want to just see how it all works, sort of beforehand. So that sounds like a really good offer.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to do a quick plug for a project that I'm working on that hopefully we've got a dedicated website that will hopefully be going live in the next month or so. It's called the Lowered GI Symptoms Pathway, and we've actually created it in collaboration with charities like Celiac UK. So it feeds directly from what Ben and Helen are just saying. A lot of these symptoms for lower gastrointestinal conditions are all the same, and that's why it can be so hard to get a diagnosis. So we've created a pathway for patients and for parents of children and young people, and also one for primary care healthcare professionals. So they'll be going live hopefully in the next month. So keep an eye out for those. I can definitely send those over to Helen and Tim to send out, because I was hoping to talk to you all today about it, but we're not quite there yet with the website. But yeah, the purpose of those is to not only educate primary care healthcare professionals, but also help empower people living with undiagnosed symptoms to get their correct diagnosis. So I will make sure those get sent out, because yeah, we just want to spread the word about those and help people see what tests they can ask for, you know, what language they could be using. Again, like with the symptom checker, it's about helping you speak to your GP in the right way, which I know can be, you know, a real challenge for some people. You know, I know it can be difficult, so it's all part of our work towards that. So I'll make sure to send that over when we have it.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that. Has anyone got any last minute questions before we finish up? I'd like to just say, whilst we're waiting for anything further to come in, thank you so much, Ben and Jess, for coming along to talk to us today, and Ben, for, you know, speaking so honestly about your experience. It's been, you know, sort of really great. Thank you to everybody who's come along as well to, you know, sort of take the time to, you know, sort of come to this event. We will send out the slides afterwards and all the resources that we've talked about. And do keep an eye out, as we say, on the Crohn's and Colitis website for any further updates. We hold these sessions every month on different topics, so do keep an eye out on our website as well for the next one that's coming up. So thank you everybody for coming along today, and I hope that you all have a lovely weekend. Take care.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Always happy to talk about bowels, poos, and the charity.
Yeah, thank you everyone so much for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.